Anyway, I was turned down, and that still happens to me.
At 62, Julian Lennon, the son of the legendary John Lennon, has finally opened up about a part of his past he's kept buried for decades. In a moment of rare honesty, he admitted, "I utterly hated her." The confession shocked fans who followed his life marked by fame, loss, and complicated family ties. But who was the her that Julian spoke about with such raw emotion? And what drove such deep resentment in the son of a Beatle? This revelation peels back the curtain on a painful chapter in Julian's life, one that changes how we see him forever. Join us in this video as we reveal the details. Who Julian Lennon really hated. For Julian Lennon, life after his father's tragic death was never peaceful. Behind the fame, music, and legacy of John Lennon lay years of emotional scars that Julian carried silently. The root of that pain was one person, Yoko Ono. To the world, she was John's muse, his second wife, the woman who shared his later years. But to Julian, she was the symbol of everything that tore his childhood apart. When his father left his mother, Cynthia, for Yoko, Julian's world changed forever. He didn't see Yoko as a stepmother or even a rival. She became a reminder of loss, of distance, and of a love that had been taken from him. As the years went by, that resentment only deepened. The bitterness wasn't just emotional, it became painfully practical after John's death. Yoko took control of John's estate, and for nearly 20 years, Julian had little say in what happened to his father's belongings or legacy. Every letter from lawyers, every legal document, every decision signed under Yoko's name reinforced his sense of exclusion. He felt as though she was the gatekeeper to everything that connected him to his father. In interviews, Julian never hid his feelings. He admitted that trusting Yoko was impossible. In his eyes, she wasn't just protecting John's memory, she was controlling it. Public appearances only made things worse. Whenever they were seen together, whether at tributes or events honoring John, there was always an invisible wall between them. They exchanged polite smiles, brief nods, and a few words, but nothing about those moments felt real. Observers could sense the distance, the tension, the unspoken history that lingered between them. The silence between Julian and Yoko said more than words ever could, but time has a strange way of softening even the hardest emotions. In September 2010, something unexpected happened, a fragile moment of peace. Julian was holding the opening of his photography exhibition, Timeless, a project that meant the world to him. It was supposed to be a celebration of art and memory, but it turned into something more, a quiet reunion of people linked forever by John Lennon's life. Cynthia, Julian's mother, was there. So was his half-brother Sean, whom Julian deeply loved. Even May Pang, John's former companion, attended. And then there was Yoko. No one knew what to expect that night. Many anticipated awkwardness, old wounds reopening, or tense encounters. But surprisingly, the evening passed without a single harsh word. There were polite conversations, friendly smiles, and even a few hugs. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was peace. For the first time, everyone who had once been divided by love and legacy stood in the same room, quietly coexisting. To Julian, that meant more than anyone realized. It showed that healing didn't always come through grand gestures. Sometimes it was enough just to breathe the same air without anger. Julian's perspective began to shift after that. His love for Sean, his younger brother, was genuine and unconditional. Over time, he realized that his bitterness toward Yoko would only hurt Sean. Every insult, every grudge would find its way to his brother's heart, and that wasn't something Julian could bear. So, he made a choice. He decided to stop fighting battles that couldn't be won. He would protect his relationship with Sean, even if it meant letting go of the anger that had shaped so much of his life. This didn't erase the past or heal every wound, but it did create something delicate, a truce built on quiet understanding. Julian no longer saw Yoko as a friend or equal, but as someone he could coexist with, for the sake of love, not forgiveness. Their relationship remains complicated, woven with memories of loss, conflict, and survival. Yet both of them seem to understand that true peace isn't always about saying, "I forgive you." Sometimes it's about choosing not to reopen old scars. Julian can't change what happened. He'll always carry the pain of a broken family, the years of distance, and the legal fights that followed. But he's learned to live with it, to find a kind of calm within the chaos. The peace he's found isn't loud or triumphant. It's gentle and fragile. It lives in small acts, a shared smile, a quiet moment of understanding, the decision to love one person enough to stop hating another. And though it's not the happy ending the world might expect, for Julian Lennon, it's enough. But what exactly could have fueled the hate Julian Lennon had for Yoko Ono? Keep watching to find out. The boy left behind. Long before the world knew him as the son of a Beatle, Julian Lennon was just a little boy who wanted a normal life. To the outside world, his childhood looked charmed. A famous name, the son of John Lennon. People imagined glamour, wealth, and happiness. But behind the closed doors of the Lennon home, things were painfully different. Happiness was rare, and love was fragile. The day John walked out was the day everything changed. He left for someone new, leaving behind his wife, Cynthia, and their young son. There was no farewell, no final embrace, just silence and confusion. For Julian, it wasn't just losing a father. It was losing the feeling of safety that every child deserves. Cynthia was left to pick up the pieces. She worked tirelessly, selling family belongings just to keep food on the table. The world might have pictured mansions and limousines, but their reality was a small flat, second-hand clothes and constant uncertainty. It was survival, not luxury. Still, through it all, Cynthia's love was unwavering. She shielded her son from as much pain as she could, even when her own heart was breaking. The one good thing to come from her time with John, she often said, was Julian, the boy who made every struggle worthwhile. At school, things weren't much easier. Julian's last name made him a target. Teachers assumed he had everything, so when the other kids teased or hit him, few stepped in to help. They couldn't see that behind the famous name was a lonely boy who wanted to be seen for who he was, not who his father was. The bullying, the whispers, the isolation, they all left deep marks. Julian learned early that fame was a mask, and behind it often hid pain and emptiness. He realized that being part of a legend meant losing your own story. As he grew older, the contrast between the John Lennon the world adored and the father he knew at home became unbearable. The same man who sang about peace and love had been absent from his own son's life. While the world saw a devoted artist, Julian saw broken promises and distance. Every time he heard the words, "Imagine all the people living life in peace," it stung. Peace had never lived in his home. What made it worse was watching his father pour his affection into his younger son, Sean. To the world, John had become the perfect parent, nurturing, present, and loving. But to Julian, it felt like a cruel irony. The father who barely called or wrote to him was now celebrated for his fatherly devotion. It wasn't jealousy, it was heartbreak. The difference in how his father treated Sean compared to him was impossible to ignore. For Julian, it was like being erased from his father's new story. There were cruel rumors, too, whispers that John once called Julian a mistake. Whether or not those words were ever truly said didn't matter. The damage had already been done. Julian grew up believing that he was somehow unwanted, that his birth had been an accident. Those words, real or not, carved themselves into his memory, deepening the wounds left by abandonment. Cynthia tried to fill the void as best she could. She gave Julian strength, faith, and a sense of purpose, but the shadow of John Lennon loomed over everything. His father's songs played everywhere, on the radio, on TV, in every store window. The world adored the man who had walked away from them. For Julian, it was an unending reminder that the world's hero was his personal heartbreak. Even when contact between father and son happened, It was awkward and strained. Phone calls felt forced. Meetings were short, uncomfortable, and full of things left unsaid. There were moments when Julian hoped for change, a kind word, a small gesture, a guitar gifted from his father. But those flickers of hope always faded back into silence. Each disappointment built another wall around his heart. Julian eventually stopped expecting anything. He accepted that the father he needed was never coming back. Instead, he learned to protect himself. His walls weren't made of anger, but of survival, built from years of feeling unseen, unheard, and unloved. And though the world saw him as John Lennon's son, Julian grew into a man who had learned one of life's hardest truths, that sometimes the people the world celebrates can leave the deepest wounds on those closest to them. So how did Julian pave his own path? Let's find out. Finding his own voice. After spending much of his early life overshadowed by his father's legacy, Julian Lennon eventually forged a path that was entirely his own. Though he was John Lennon's son, Julian's influences stretched far beyond the Beatles. He drew inspiration from artists like David Bowie, Steely Dan, Keith Jarrett, and even AC/DC, an eclectic mix that shaped his distinctive musical identity. His first brush with music came early, at just 11 years old, when he played drums on his father's album Walls and Bridges for the track Ya Ya. When the song was officially released, Julian was stunned. He later laughed that if he had known it would end up on the album, he would have played much better. Still, in the album's sleeve notes, he was proudly credited as starring on drums with Dad on piano. It was an innocent, tender moment between father and son, one of the few that would be immortalized in sound. Julian's professional career began with a meteoric rise. In 1984, his debut album, Veloute, produced by the legendary Phil Ramone, shot him into the spotlight. Songs like Too Late for Goodbyes and Veloute climbed the charts, earning him 2 top 10 hits and a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist. The music videos, directed by Sam Peckinpah and Martin Lewis, gave the world a glimpse of the young Lennon's charm and authenticity. Even Paul McCartney sent him a telegram, wishing him luck and showing that the old bond between the Lennons and McCartneys still lingered. His follow-up album, The Secret Value of Daydreaming, 1986, faced harsh reviews but still performed well commercially, landing a top 40 spot on the Billboard 200. It also produced Stick Around, Julian's first #1 single on the US Album Rock Tracks chart. That same year he recorded Because for Dave Clark's Musical Time, and even shared a stage with legends like Roger Daltrey, Justin Hayward, and Billy Connolly in The Hunting of the Snark, a benefit performance at the Royal Albert Hall attended by royalty. Later that year, he performed alongside the great Chuck Berry, another surreal moment in a career defined by unexpected collaborations. Though Julian never quite replicated the US success of his debut, his 1989 single Now You're in Heaven reached #5 in Australia, proving his international appeal. 2 years later, his album Help Yourself showcased his evolving artistry. The single Saltwater, which touched on environmental themes and emotional reflection, soared to #6 in the UK and became a #1 hit in Australia. During that time, he even covered the Rolling Stones' Ruby Tuesday for the Wonder Years soundtrack, reminding audiences of his ability to reinterpret classics with his own emotional depth. In the mid-1990s, Julian stepped away from music to focus on philanthropy after meeting with elders from the Mirning people of Australia. The encounter profoundly changed him, shifting his focus from fame to purpose. While rumors often swirled that he might reunite with Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr to fill in for his father, the idea was firmly rejected. McCartney himself explained, "Why would we want to subject him to all of this?" It was a rare show of empathy from those who understood the pressures Julian faced. In 1998, Julian returned with Photograph Smile, released under his own label. Critics praised the album's craftsmanship, with Stephen Thomas Erlewine noting that it would likely receive even more praise if it weren't made by the son of a Beatle. That observation captured Julian's ongoing struggle. Every success of his own was inevitably compared to his father's shadow. In the years that followed, he experimented with various projects, including recording When I'm 64 for a 2002 Allstate insurance commercial and venturing into online business partnerships with Bebo founder Michael Birch and Todd Mager. Julian's creativity wasn't limited to music. In 2009, through his company, The Revolution LLC, he released Lucy, a tribute to Lucy Vodden, the girl who inspired Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Half of the proceeds were donated to lupus research, blending his art with compassion. By 2011, he released Everything Changes, an introspective album that reflected a more mature, grounded artist. The accompanying documentary, Through the Picture Window, directed by Dick Carruthers, offered fans a glimpse into Julian's songwriting process and featured appearances from stars like Bono, Steven Tyler, and Paul Buchanan. In 2022, after more than a decade, Julian released Jude, an album whose title was both nostalgic and deeply symbolic. It referenced the Beatles' classic Hey Jude, the song Paul McCartney had written for him as a child to comfort him during his parents' separation. Julian described naming the album Jude as a personal awakening, a coming of age, he said, facing up to who I am. The songs, drawn from 3 decades of writing, explored the wars within and the wars without, a reflection of his lifelong journey toward acceptance. The album was met with critical acclaim, hailed as an introspective masterwork. Beyond music, Julian built a diverse artistic and humanitarian career. He explored film. Julian also found a new form of expression in photography. After photographing his brother Sean's music tour in 2007, he fell in love with the art form. In 2010, he held his first major exhibition, Timeless, at the Morrison Hotel Gallery, a collection of 35 intimate photos, including portraits of Sean and Bono. In 2024, Julian released his photography book, Life's Fragile Moments, published by To News. It was a culmination of years spent seeing the world through a quieter, more patient lens. Through all his creative ventures, music, film, photography, and philanthropy, Julian Lennon has spent his life proving that he is more than his father's son. His story is one of resilience and rediscovery. Every song, photograph, and project is a small act of defiance, a statement that his identity belongs to him alone. For Julian, peace was never about escaping John Lennon's shadow, but learning to live gracefully within it. What promise was made, and how did Julian Lennon honor it? Stay tuned to find out. The White Feather Promise. Julian Lennon often spoke of a deeply personal conversation he once had with his father. John had told him that if he ever passed away, he'd find a way to let Julian know that he and everyone else would be okay. The message, John said, would come to you in the form of a white feather. To Julian, that symbol became more than a sign of peace. It was a promise. Years later, while touring in Australia, that promise seemed to come true. 2 indigenous elders from the Mirning tribe approached him in Adelaide, offering him a single white feather. They asked for his help in giving their people a voice, a moment that stopped Julian in his tracks. To him, it felt like his father's message had finally arrived. That encounter inspired him to produce the award-winning documentary Whale Dreamers, which explored the Mirning tribe's spiritual connection to whales and the environment. The experience profoundly changed him, leading Julian to establish the White Feather Foundation, TWWFF, in 2007. Its mission was simple yet powerful: to protect life in all its forms, human, animal, and environmental. Through TWFF, Julian partnered with charities and philanthropists worldwide, focusing on 4 key areas: clean water, preservation of indigenous cultures, environmental protection, and education and health. The foundation's early impact was recognized in 2008 when Prince Albert II of Monaco presented TWFF with the Better World Environmental Award, a testament to its growing influence. Julian's humanitarian efforts extended far beyond symbolic gestures. After the devastating 2015 Nepal earthquake, TWFF contributed over $106,000 to the Music for Relief Fund to aid victims. Julian also personally traveled to Kenya, Ethiopia, and Colombia in 2014 to witness firsthand the education and environmental projects his foundation supported. Following his mother Cynthia's passing in 2015, Julian honored her memory by launching the Cynthia Lennon Scholarship for Girls under TWFF. The program has since awarded more than 50 scholarships to young women across Africa, the UK, and the US, continuing his mother's legacy of compassion and empowerment. For Julian Lennon, the white feather wasn't just a symbol. It became a lifelong mission to heal, to give, and to remind the world that peace isn't found in words alone, but in what we choose to do for one another. What are your thoughts about Julian Lennon's story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.